Recording in progress.
Okay, it's now 5 o'clock. I call this meeting to order. Before we do that, I'm going to ask Steve Groom to introduce his newest staff to the council. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Council members, committee members, I'd like to introduce you to Tooch Mam. She has been working for us for a few weeks. She comes to us with quite a bit of experience, and she is taking minutes, so be nice to her, please.
Well, thank you and welcome. All right, so for the record, my name is Huang Tran, Chair of the FATRAC meeting, and on my right is Deputy Mayor Honda. On my left are committee members Jack Dovey, Paul McDaniel, and Council President Linda Kochma and Mr. JW. High-end hotel.
Chair, I'm also online.
Oh, welcome, Lydia. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to our agenda here. Do we have any public comments? No public comments. We are moving on to committee business. Item A, approval of summary minutes for July 2023. Does anybody have any questions? If not, may I have the motion, please?
I move approval of the minutes forward to our next council meeting.
So we have a motion and the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the matter passed 3-0. We now moving on to item B, replacement of phenolized VMS sign. Welcome.
Good evening. Chair Tran, committee members, members of council, I'm Desiree Winkler, Deputy Public Works Director, presenting this on behalf of Director Walsh, who is on vacation in drier places than this. So really quickly, we have an existing variable message sign that was heavily vandalized during the course of some work. After review by the manufacturer, it was a total loss. So we recommend and are seeking approval to surplus this variable message sign and purchase a new one with its reserves. The reserves collected were a little over $17,000. A new VMS sign is a little over $18,000 plus tax. So the additional funds would need to be made available from the general fund, which is proposed to be included in the next budget adjustment. I am happy to answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And this has never happened before? No one's ever vandalized one of these before?
Not this heavily.
So whatever they took, do they sell it for, is it worth something to them? Or they just did it for fun?
We're not sure.
Huh.
Probably a little bit of both.
All right, well, thank you.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Is there any insurance capabilities that we can do on this new one? Because I saw they put it, I assume this is probably going to happen again. But is there any insurance or anything we can take out on these kind of signs for if this happens again? Or is it just going to be coming back for a new purchase if it happens again?
Well, in this case, I think most of our equipment does have insurance, but in this case, being a total loss, then just like your vehicle insurance is, I don't know if this particular item was insured, though.
No, it's not.
This one is not.
No, most of our non-vehicle items are not insured. They're self-insured, so basically we take the risk.
It's probably because
ourselves.
it's below the deductible.
Yes, and we look at all of the equipment, and if you're below a certain threshold, and it's about $20,000 or so, it's not worth buying insurance.
Gotcha.
Long term, it's better for us just to take the risk.
All right, thank you.
I'll follow up with that. So it's happened before and now it's happened again. So if we are gonna buy the new sign, what's gonna happen then? I mean, do we have any plan to protect this thing, or, which is basically,
Well, we have about a half a dozen of these variable message signs, and you see them all over the city. So they're deployed for whether traffic control or announcements of city events, that type of thing. So it's not something that happens all the time. Most of the time, they're put in areas where there's at least regular positive traffic, that is going by and seeing this. I'm not sure exactly where this one was parked during the course of non-working hours. It just happened to be in a location where they had enough time and no one was seeing what they were doing, so.
all right, thank you. Any other question? Okay, if not, may I have a motion, please?
I move to forward option 1 to the October 3rd, 2023 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to item, okay, I lost track of the item number. Hang on a second here.
C.
C, okay. Purchase of replacement copier.
Yes, good evening.
You are not Thomas, right?
No, I'm sorry. Good evening, Chair Tran and council member. My name is Brian Peterson. I'm the IT operations manager. I'm filling in for Thomas. He's also on vacation. So I don't know why he's not on there, but yes. I'm here to talk about item C and D. First item is the copier replacement. We're planning on replacing 3 large copiers, 2 in the police department and 1 in management services. These copiers have reached their 7-year replacement cycle. The total budget for 2023 was $43,400, and the total cost of the copiers is $43,303.65. We were using the Washington State NASBL contract to purchase these items, and these copiers will fall under the current maintenance agreement with Copiers Northwest. And then, you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Dovey? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was ready to vote.
I'm just curious if we have any 3D computers.
No, we do not have no 3D ones.
Go ahead.
I'm going to motion then. I move to forward the proposed purchase of 3 copiers to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second. Any other questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the matter passed 3-0. Thank you. We are moving on to item D, purchase of replacement computers. Go ahead.
Okay, so item D is we are replacing computers, or desktop computers and laptops. All these desktop computers and laptops have a 5-year cycle. This equipment has reached its end of life. We appropriated $60,000 in 2023 and for the budget, and we are going to spend $44,424.18 from Dell Technologies. These computers and laptops are being purchased again from the state, Washington State NASBL contract. All the Dell desktop and laptops come with a 5-year hardware warranty, and the laptops come with accidental protection as well. The actual amount of equipment we're buying is on the table and in the packet. If you want me to go over it, I will. But otherwise, that's pretty much it.
Any questions?
I have a general.
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, is this for overall most departments, or is it certain departments we're replacing with these guys?
It goes for all the departments. We go through them and have a 5-year warranty or replacement, and we go through them and we take the highest priority ones that need fixing or replaced first.
And then do you happen to know who got the Precision 5680 laptop? It's like doing the,
The the higher ones.
Yeah.
Those went to, so there's two downstairs in PD, they're the total station. They
Okay.
need to be the higher workstations for the, you know,
Software.
investigation and software.
Okay.
Yes.
That's my only question.
Mr. Dovey?
Yeah, when we replace them, where do we dispose of do we donate them to somebody, or do they go to some recycler? Where do the units actually go that we replace?
Or generally, we just recycle them. The reason why, a couple things, really nobody wants them, because first off, we deband them through the CGIS reasons of getting, and then at that point, there's no operating systems on them. They're, again, as you guys know, 5 years on a lap, or on a PC on a lap is pretty much done. They expire,
Thank you.
yes.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So then everyone who works in the city that has a PC or a laptop has a machine that's 5 years or younger?
Oh, yes, the ones that are remaining, yes. There is some that are actually also qualified for replacement, but at this point, we do not have enough money to purchase them.
So if you could purchase them, how many would you need to purchase, do you know?
I don't have the exact number. I
Okay,
could get that.
thank you.
Seeing no other questions? Go ahead.
I move to forward the proposed purchase of replacement desktop computers and laptops to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, item E, is reclassification of park maintenance worker 1. Mr. John Hutton, welcome.
Good evening, Chair Tran, Deputy Mayor, council members. You should have gotten a memo, and before you, the policy question this evening is, should the city council approve upgrading a current parks maintenance worker 1 position to a parks maintenance lead worker 3 position? The items would be or the 2 options are to approve this position conversion or do not approve, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I can read the memo, but I believe you all got it. This is revenue neutral. We have existing funds. This will help the city tremendously. As you've driven around the city, you've seen, and you saw firsthand on the 4th of July, we had an irrigation break at Celebration Park, and the grass field where we hold Celebration Park 5 and 6 was showing real stress because it took additional time to get that fixed. At an unfortunate time of the year, the hottest time of the year, right before our largest event. That was unfortunate, but you'll also see throughout the city other areas where irrigation has been lacking. We just have not been able to keep up, and with the right talented individuals, we've struggled for a while with our irrigation. We have several systems that are old, need to be upgraded into today's technology, which also will result in tremendous amounts of water savings for the city. With the new technology, with sensors that are in the ground, there's a lot of great technology that's out there. We need to get this done. The total dollar amount is just over $7,000, and we have this existing budget available, so it's revenue neutral. There won't be any additional cost to the city. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Only question I have is, do we actually have a person in the position we're moving up, or are we looking for someone to come in for that position?
We have an interested person in-house, but we will probably go outside and inside for the advertisement. But we do have an interested person who's shown tremendous ability and work ethic and ability to learn, and is a fearless hard worker. So we think we may have an inside candidate, but we'll probably go out because.
Just for bid?
Yes, exactly.
And then would they, if there was an inside person, would they need to go for additional training, or do they have the skill set at the moment?
They would get some additional internal training from management, and there would be probably some additional training available that's very affordable. So we would encourage that training.
Okay, thank you.
I see no other questions.
I move to forward the proposed position conversion to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter pass 3-0. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we are moving on to item F, interfund loan for community development block grant. Sarah, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Bridgeford, and I am presenting the interfund loan, which is a resolution, and it's the interfund loan for the Community Development Block Grant Fund. So I will give just some high-level information. CDBG is a program designed to serve low and moderate income residents, so all the projects have that as a component of what they're doing. We have 4 adopted goals of addressing affordable housing, economic development, homelessness, and then suitable living environments. We receive about $770,000 per year. That varies depending on the congressional budget and the formula that HUD is using, how many other communities might come in to the CDBG program, so it does vary a little bit. At any given time, we're also continuing with prior year funds. We might have projects that are continuing to use prior year funds as well. Our program year runs January through December. This becomes important for a couple things. As we talk about timing and the importance of the interfund loan, the timing of our grant funds often comes after our program start date. We talk about this frequently with council that we are tied to the congressional budget, and if we don't get our allocation until March, that means HUD is not accepting our plan until that time, and then there's a process to get the grant agreement and actually have access to those funds, which happens around August to September in most years. So that means that our program year is 2/3 completed before we have access to those funds. Additionally, even if we had access, it is a reimbursement program, so we're incurring costs as a city and then needing to request that reimbursement through HUD. So there is sometimes timing issues there as well. And with that, I would invite Steve to talk about the interfund loan and the interest rates and how that's calculated and the details on that side.
Sure, this is actually a cash flow mechanism because, as Sarah mentioned, this is a reimbursement grant. The expenditures are budgeted. She can spend them. The problem is in order to get reimbursed, you have to spend some cash, and the fund itself is restricted, and so it needs seed money, if you will. So that's why I'm sure that this is a recurring resolution every 3 years because they didn't give us money upfront originally, so every 3 years we have to do this. When we do a loan, even an interfund loan, you want to know where the cash is eventually coming from, and since it's a reimbursement grant from HUD, the question is how collectible do we think that is, and we think it's 100%. So to keep us prepared for audit and get all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. We just need to make sure that we have authorized the borrowing of money from the general fund so that they can spend the grant, submit the expenditures for reimbursement, and then we get it back. That's how it works.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. We've done this before, haven't we? So
That's correct.
as soon as the CDBG funding comes in, then this loan is paid back? Or we don't wait the 3 years to pay this back, do we?
No, we do that as soon as we have access to the funds. And the reason for that is also that we have to report on them to HUD through our annual report, and you have to show those draws through their system as well.
And I think we do have to show the auditors, because there's a limit, I think it's in the state statutes, or no, I think it's the audit guidelines from the state auditor's office, that 3 years is the maximum they'll do an interfund loan. So we actually have to do the mechanics of closing it out, starting a new one, and that would involve repaying it.
Well, my question is, so the funding should come in between August and September. So then is this paid back in August and September? So
Yes.
we don't wait the whole 3 years to pay this back?
No. And sometimes it's even quicker. We might have a capital project or just our staff time. When we have access to those funds, we'll reimburse for program administration on a quarterly basis rather than monthly, just because of the amount of staff time from finance, from CD that it would take to do that on a monthly basis. And it's nominal amount of interest over that period.
Right.
But we do it in the same program year that the expenditures occurred.
So we currently don't have an interfund loan for this program?
I think,
It's been
I think
paid
there's
back.
one ending, there.
Yes.
There must be, yeah. There must be one ending, so, because we have to do this every 3 years.
That's correct, every 3.
So we currently have, we currently have
So
one,
this is a renewal. We need this in order to continue to operate on this basis.
but we pay this back in August or September, or whenever the funding comes in.
Yep, and ongoing throughout the year. So if we have it earlier, we're doing those draws on a regular basis. We also do them, if we have a capital project that's larger, we're going to do that draw right away. We time it with finance. They're great partners. Like when Fusion has acquired a transitional housing unit, we were requesting that reimbursement the same day to actually minimize the amount of interest that we're accruing.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Trying to understand a little bit more, because I think I already talked to Steve a little about this. I went to recently an AWC event that was talk about financing, and they said this is one of the things you don't do, is the inter-transfers. So I'm going to ask for some education on that one. And the second one is, the items that we're paying for, that we're getting the grant for, are they already in the budget, the annual budget? Okay, so thank you. When we put those in the annual budget, do we depend on the grant to pay for those every year?
Yes.
So what happens if we do not get the grant? I know it's almost 100%, but it is what it is sometimes. What happens at that point?
Well, we would not move forward with those projects. So what we do, like I said, we have some prior year resources too, so we're working through those. Council sees the annual action plan in November, would approve it at that time. That includes the projects. But we don't move those forward until we have HUD approval of our plan.
Okay.
So until we get that HUD approval and we know that we're going to be getting that grant agreement, that's the only time that we move forward without having the funds, is once we get our grant approval, we may enter into those contracts and say, this is, we're going to get this at this point. But we're not starting projects January 1 when we don't have our allocation yet, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. And if it sounds correct, you guys currently do have a budget, and it does have money in. This is to cover for when you guys run out before the reimbursements kick in?
Yes, this is just renewing the interfund loan so that we can do that with our reimbursement thesis. We want to have this ready to go, and
Gotcha. And then the loan, is it actually money being transferred into accounts, or is it just a paper thing right now, like a contract that's written between?
It's a
the two?
transfer of cash. The expenditures themselves have to be eligible, and and as Sarah mentioned, she has to make sure that we are going to get reimbursed. But as far as the interfund loan, it's just a balance sheet transfer. It's the ability to have some cash to spend. And on the blanket statement that we should never do an interfund loan, I'm going to look at MRSC's guidance, or maybe ask to teach their next class, because I think there are some situations where it does make sense.
It was just one of the things they were really adamant about, and I was like, okay, that's something I wanted to get some more understanding about.
Appreciate the public question, sure.
Do you have an idea why they might say that? Is it something that makes?
In general, interfund loans are a tool that allows you to avoid external bank interest. So if, for example, if we're going to be doing a big project, like say, for example, hypothetically, a maintenance operations facility, and we wanted to purchase some land initially in small amounts, but we didn't have the full amount that we were prepared to go to the bond process and get the full amount, that would be an example where an interfund loan, it would be operating as a bridge loan, but the underlying fundamentals are, where's the money going to be coming from? And what's going to be repaying it back? And so I think it's a good cautionary stance to have.
It might be that taking out an interfund loan without a plan on how to pay it back is a horrible idea. And we don't ever do that. So that could be the caution there is, don't use this as it'd be like paying your car payments with your credit card without any plan on how to get out of that.
may I add, I want to clarify, I want to make sure I did not misspeak. There is one area where we do incur costs that if HUD did not give us a new allocation, that the city would incur, and that is with staff time for program administration. But that wouldn't go away even if we don't get the funds. The city would have to do that. That's reporting on the prior year. If we have any ongoing projects that need to be completed, those would continue, and the city would have to make a decision if they wanted to return any remaining funds. But I just want to clarify, there is that cost that potentially, if we didn't have a congressional allocation, that we would have incurred those staff costs in administering that program.
That's just a cost of doing business, it's an employee cost, right?
Yes,
Okay.
but I made it sound as if we had none, and that isn't entirely accurate.
Councilmember Watch.
Yeah, just a quick question. I see that with the interfund loan, there's a 4.12% interest on it. You know, the interest is basically just moving from one pocket to another. But will the CDBG grant, will that cover that interest all right, or are we, how does that part work?
I think that's going to be on the accounting side. We take our federal single audit seriously. I think there's a requirement that we have to have interest built in there, and it may be absorbed, and we may end up repaying it. I'm not sure, but it's minor, and we're trying to be careful.
Obviously, the interest is just moving from one pocket to another
Right.
anyway, but I was just wondering the mechanics of that, so.
That's correct. And interest is only charged if we carry that balance. So it's, and Steve could speak to this, I don't know that mechanism quite as well, but that's part of why we work on the reimbursement as soon as we incur the
Okay.
cost whenever we can.
All right, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
I move to forward the proposed resolution to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, matter passed 3-0. Thank you, sir. All right, so we moving along. Item G, American Rescue Plan Act Grant Project. Tanya Carter, welcome.
No, it's just a PDF. Good evening. Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Kochmar, and FEDERAC Committee, Tran, Dovey, McDaniel, and Lydia Cephadawson, Councilmember Cephadawson I think she's still online. I am your Economic Development Director, Tanya Carter, and I am here to continue our discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act programs that Economic Development is programming for use of the funds. And I have on the screen, more for the public benefit, the summary of all of the programs that we discussed 3 weeks ago at Council. And we put together this flyer to hopefully present the material in another way that might also help to explain things. So everyone should have a copy on the dais. I can either go through it or we can have a discussion, but I also did want to provide an overall summary just of the thought process in developing the programs, and this was also included in the email this evening to Council. So the overall strategy when developing the economic development ARPA programs was to support the business community as a whole by addressing issues that concern businesses the most. And there is also a forthcoming business outreach survey that will be provided in the subsequent weeks for Council also to review. And essentially, just to kind of draw some analogies, the philosophy on all of these programs can be likened a little bit to, if you give a man a fish, he can eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he can fish for a lifetime. So it was really with that philosophy in mind that economic development wanted to execute programs that teach, support, and grow businesses over time, rather than providing one-time funding to, any one particular business. And so basically, to summarize in a little bit different way than is on the flyer, the long-term educational and direct support concepts as well that these ARPA programs directly address, again, with the aim to keep the most businesses thriving in federal way, were the following 5 topics. So teaching all businesses multiple sustainable ways to obtain funding, so not just, providing a one-time hit, if you will. Generating regional business viability to increase customer traffic and sales revenue for businesses. Also developing a workforce pipeline through schools collaboration and providing workforce childcare, which is accessible by all workforce. Placemaking strategies to attract workforce and business into Federal Way. And finally, grant writing services to help fund city projects that drive commerce, community, and well-being to all the businesses in the community. So that was the kind of the overall philosophy for the programs. There was a question with regard to some specific programs, and these specific programs would potentially address crime issues that are occurring in the city. So just wanted to touch on that as well for a minute. And essentially, economic development is still exploring a couple programs in that regard. So the first one is what is commonly known as a broken window program. And what economic development would like to do is actually kind of, we are exploring a little bit more of a robust program. So the current programs that are offered in other cities are essentially just replacing windows with standard windows again. And so what we are exploring is seeing if there's a way to actually replace windows with more of a deterrent. So there's 3 different types of window treatments that would be more of a deterrent, and we're trying to explore, what the viability and feasibility of that would be. The first type of deterrent would be just a Mylar coating. The second type of deterrent would be more of a frame and glass that would go over existing structures. And the third would be an actual replacement of the entire window structure, the frame and the window, to essentially unbreakable glass. So that's the first program that we are still exploring. The second is additional crime deterrence. So some things that we are exploring is additional police equipment such as ECAP vehicles, also mobile surveillance trailers, which are MSTs, commonly known as the big blue light with cameras, those kind of trailer devices that you see in many of the the shopping areas around here. Many of the property owners already have those devices, so it would be looking to just augment what those property owners have. So that's a little bit of a summary, maybe in a little bit different presentation. We can run through these if you'd like, or we can just go to questions or discussion. So at the will of the committee and council.
Well, it looked like we have several people are waiting for questions, so.
Great.
I will start with Councilmember Jack Dovey.
Thank you. There's not a whole lot of things here that, in my opinion, to go over. I mean, there's details and all that, but I support most everything here. The 2 questions I have is, in workforce development, we talk about in-home childcare incubators, but I think I've become aware that there's a real need for maybe elder care. Having a 97-year-old father-in-law that I moved to Federal Way, and the amount of choices and business opportunities for people, that might be something we want to maybe put into the mix or think about, because there's an opportunity for people to have homes for elderly people that may not be able to afford to go to a nursing home or don't want to, or want to have a smaller type place to stay. And that kind of fits into the child care, but just on the other side. Not saying that the elderly are being children, but it's a big drain on families that don't have a place for mom or dad to go, and they can't take care of them at their house. So, I mean, if we're going to train people to be in that childcare business, maybe we look at the other side also. Just a thought there. And then when you talk about windows, we've talked about that a long time, but what about, I think the words, are they called bollards, or the things you put in front of doors where the cars come ripping through and tear down the doors and then come in and rob? I mean, that might be something that we're, with a window program, which I think would be really good, we're fixing the blight and hopefully making it so the next guy doesn't break the window. But maybe we want to be on the proactive side in some of these locations where we do some assistance in making so the cars can't ram the doors. I mean, they just did that big project at SeaTac where they put them all, that's more for safety, but all along SeaTac, and you go to some stores and they've put them up, and that might be something else to think about.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and we'll definitely consider that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's a lot, and one of the things I'd like to actually mention tonight is maybe splitting some of this up and move the ones that are actually easy, that most people agree on, forward, and then maybe pull out the ones that we have some longer conversations on. And that way, we won't be slowing down the process, but the ones that we do have some considerations for, concerns for, we can pull back on and think a little bit later. Because like Jackson said, there's a couple concepts that would like to be nice to put on here, but trying to slap them all in as one and making one big push, I prefer to split it up maybe a little bit and break it down, make it easier to chew on.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
Council President?
Can I ask for clarification?
Yeah.
Are you meaning just to go through this evening at the meeting and go one by one and say move forward or not, just for clarification?
Yeah, for that kind, that way we can see, there's a couple on here that I know I just won't vote for, but so by sticking them all in one proposal, I'm gonna vote no on it. So there's some of them that I agree with, so pulling those out and moving those forward, I think would be more logical than it would be to just leave them as one lump sum. And then I'll have questions on those other ones once we get through here.
Go ahead.
So, thank you very much. Tanya, on the broken window program, so the amount of money for that, it's not listed, is that, so there's $750,000 for this whole program, and you're actually right now indicating to spend $715,000, so at least $35,000, is that where the broken window program would find some money?
Yes, that, and then there also is still some funding in the bucket that was allocated to economic development in the grant writing services, which if we don't use the rest of those funds, there are still additional funds for the additional programs that we've been exploring. So, yes, there is extra funding.
So then, one last question I have on the childcare and senior health care. I'd be curious to know how many, I think they all have to have a business license. I'd be interested to know how many we have in our city.
I can certainly get that to you because there is a slight nuance with childcare. Were you specifically asking just on childcare or?
No, both.
Oh, okay, so
Senior
elder care and.
Elder
okay.
care and childcare, correct.
Then I will hold off on giving you an answer because it will be incomplete. I will give you a complete answer after I research.
Okay. So I guess that would tell me, because if we're going to educate people on a childcare business or a senior elder care business, that would give me the idea of how necessary it is.
I mean, I can just tell you very briefly on the childcare side, which is what we did research. According to statistics from organizations that do track this, Federal Way is considered a childcare desert. So that means there's not enough slots for the number of necessary childcare slots needed. And so there are two different kinds of childcares, just to kind of be a general, explain it generally. There's commercial childcare and then there's in-home childcare. The reason why there's a focus on the in-home childcare is because if you think of it, with parents that are going to work, you've got one parent going this way to work, one parent going this way to work, but then the childcare is over here, in a different part of town. The idea with in-home childcare is that you've got multiple nodes within neighborhoods that are very easy to access and reach, and so it's less of a burden
Sure.
on.
So part of what we might do, because a lot of people don't know where to look for the childcare. I mean, where do you find we don't have a phone book anymore. So, if people don't have a website, how do they find the childcare?
I mean, the easiest way right now is Google. So you can Google childcare in Federal Way, and you will come up with a pretty extensive listing. Also, we have our Shop Local website, which does list all businesses in Federal Way. They can also call ourselves, the chamber. There are a number of different ways that they can still access that information.
Okay, and I thought I would just mention that on the news tonight, the Target nationwide is closing 9 stores, 5 of which are in the Northwest, 3 in Portland and 2 in Seattle. And they're closing them primarily because of crime. And in Seattle, the 2 in Seattle are one in University District and the other in Ballard. And so I feel fortunate that we're not having our Target store being closed. And so everything that we do to prevent crime is really helping our businesses stay alive. And I think that that's a really good focus. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, on the childcare issue, I can provide you with the childcare resource. I can do it offline, so, yeah, because we work with them almost daily, so. Deputy Mayor.
I have my hands raised if you,
Oh,
when-
you know,
when you have
sorry,
time.
I can't see, okay. Lydia?
it's okay. Yeah, thank you.
So,
Thank you, Tanya.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
should I continue? Should I continue or?
Should,
Wait,
yeah, go ahead.
I'll wait.
Lydia, go ahead. I already talked to Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so Tanya, thank you for your presentation, and I did have a question earlier also, but it was answered. With this one, I do appreciate the childcare component just because, and I did hear what Councilmember Dovey said. This is around economic development, which also means working with employers, and childcare has been an issue with a lot of employees, not only availability and Federal Way being childcare desert, but also cost. And the program that we talked about earlier, I know they didn't have enough funding to even train childcare providers for in-home childcare. So I think it's very important for today's job market. So, and with the elder care that you mentioned, I feel like that could be a human services suggestion, and not necessarily this pot of money, but it's just my my input on that. Tanya, my question for you, when you were talking about the web developer, grant writer, all these different components, and I think I asked this question before.
Mm-hmm.
Can the same person who's going to do the grant writing also do the training and the workshops for those who need it, or did you? I'm sorry, I forgot what your response was to that question a couple of weeks ago. So if you could
Sure.
tell me what that was or what that is, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Safadossen. So it would be a combination, just depending on how we finalize the program. Currently, specifically for the grant writing program, it's envisioned to have a 3-part series of developing the project, creating or finding the money, and then doing the application, so a 3-part series. So that is absolutely something that the grant writing services will be able to provide guidance on. We also do have additional resources that would be involved, in collaboration or, just in helping spread the word, such as the Small Business Development Center. And, we've made the chamber aware of the program. So, I'm sure that we will figure out ways to make this really interesting, informative, and make sure that everybody involved that is involved that wants to be involved.
Thank you so much. Okay, I appreciate your response.
Thank you, Lydia. Deputy Mayor.
thank you. So for elder care, I know that we have quite a few homes, especially in anything that's a rambler, pretty much in some neighborhoods has been turned into adult family homes. But I think one thing we're lacking in Federal Way is daycare for elders. And I know that's actually what it's called. It's so, for elders that could be taken somewhere where they could be, interact with other people, be socialized, because loneliness is actually an issue for those who are living at home. And even the White House has announced that they're working on loneliness in seniors. But I don't think we have very many areas or programs in Federal Way where families can take their elderly mom or dad that lives with them when they go to work, so that they can be, have fun, do stuff with friends their age, and I think that's something we might be able to look into and support. Childcare, in the past with other money from ARPA and the CARES Act and whatever else we got from the government during COVID, we did put a substantial amount of money into childcare. Have you looked into that, and what would be the difference with this money going into childcare and what we've covered before?
I would have to check into that. I am not aware that there was any specific allocation from economic development. My colleague Sarah, who was here previously, I can certainly connect with her to see if there was something on the human services side, but currently I'm not aware of anything, but can certainly look into it and get back to you on that.
I can assure you, we certainly did put a lot of money into childcare.
Yeah, I just am not sure
Okay.
where or how, or, but I think if I understood you correctly, it would have either been funds allocated from CARES or from ARPA. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I have a kind of a trail that I can look after,
Right.
or look.
I would just like to know what the difference is and what this funding is going to do that the other funding didn't do, that we put into childcare.
I can answer at least what this program would do.
Okay.
The reason why this program is interesting is because it's, for lack of a better terms, a soup to nuts program. So the organization that we've been talking to is, it also collaborates very heavily with the state, with other counties, with other cities in Washington State and other states. And what they do is they essentially have a cohort that they train, I believe once or twice a year, and the cohort is up to 20 individuals, and those 20 individuals are recruited, they are interviewed, they get accepted into a cohort, and then they are not only trained in like a apprenticeship program, they also are kind of mentored through all of the licensing and what's required on the licensing, how you set up in-home childcare, et cetera. And then they also are supported with kind of a surround suite of services during their educational process, if you will. And then afterwards, once they have set up the in-home childcare, they also not only receive continuing support, but there is reported a 92% success rate after 5 years of the cohorts that go through this program, that they are still in the program, that they are actually returning to the program as mentors, to kind of keep the system going, and that they are also getting new cohorts to be inducted into the program. So it's a really great flywheel, complete soup to nuts program that has a very high success rate.
So when they're accepted into this program, someone has already checked out that wherever location they're going to put their childcare is acceptable? So that they
I
already
can't answer
have-
specifically at what period in time, but yes, that is part of the process, because as I'm sure you're well aware, there is like 100-page kind of requirements book for childcare, and so the individual is, trained in every aspect of what is required in order to pass the inspection, in order to be able to hold the in-home childcare at their domicile.
So what if somebody, let's say they live in an apartment or a condo that doesn't allow for a childcare setup? If they wanted to be in this program, would they be able to rent space and then still be in the program, or is this just for?
I can't answer that very specific question, but if it is of interest, I can certainly ask the question.
I would be interested in that,
Sure.
because not everyone who might be interested in this, or who would be absolutely amazing taking care of someone's child, might not have a home that they could do it in, but would be able to rent a space that they could do it in.
Yep.
And then I agree with Councilmember McDaniel that we should vote on each of these individually and not as a group. And then my last question is one that I wrote you today about grants for businesses. When we initially put this, we were talking about ARPA funding and where we wanted it to go. I thought that we had, as a council, talked about giving businesses grants, those businesses that suffered during COVID and after coming out of COVID. So individual grants, and I don't see that. Is that in any of these that we would do that, or is that not part of this?
It is not part of this, and there's two reasons for that. The first reason is what was shared earlier on the overall philosophy and strategy, that it's more about, if you will, teaching a man to fish instead of just giving a man a fish. So making sure that the most businesses can benefit the longest from the funding. That's the first, the first kind of philosophical point of it. The second is that it's also very difficult, to award a grant to a business. There's over 2,000 businesses in Federal Way, and then, the question then becomes, how much would the grant be? Who is deserving of the grant if there's, 2,000 businesses that are asking for grants, and, if we would have to divide a grant up, by 2,000 with the amount of money that we have, how would that be? And if someone loses, anyway, you get the point. It would be very difficult to kind of determine who, how much, why, when. So the philosophy was really, how can we do the most good with the money that we have to create the best business environment, for the longevity of the city?
Well, I don't think you'd have to be starting from scratch, because we've done that before with COVID money. We did give small businesses grants, so you probably would have something that you could fall back on and look at. But all right, it was just a question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, I think those might have been loans, CARES Act loans that were given out, which was a different structure.
There were some grants also,
Okay.
but I like your idea, this concept a lot more than what that is. I mean, that's, as speaking as a business person with a business, I mean, COVID had a huge impact on it. And anything that we can do to help businesses long-term, I think is more beneficial than a lot of the businesses that were impacted short-term that could use this the most may already be out of business. So, anyway, just my thoughts. Sorry that I didn't wait to be recognized by the chair.
No, that's okay. I just
That's
know
okay.
that, businesses that are looking, I've talked to several, and rent is really expensive in Federal Way, especially in the downtown area. And landlords are upping their prices. And so I know that there are some businesses in trouble right now, looking at how they can stay in Federal Way, continue to pay their rent and make some money to survive. So, and there's, eventually, downtown is gonna be redeveloped, we're gonna have a lot of people down there, but between now and then, we wanna keep those businesses around. So I just wanna make sure that we can be helping those businesses survive until we get all those people downtown.
Thank you for that. And actually, I would be very grateful if any of the council has businesses that are in those situations, please do send them to economic development. And that's part of our job, is to help, keep the businesses in Federal Way. So we are very happy to work one-on-one and connecting those businesses with, ways to support them. So thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, before we have further discussion on this, I want to check in with members of the committee to make sure this is the direction that we want to go. Is it our desire to discuss and vote on each of the 6 projects? Is that what I'm hearing?
I have items I'd like to pull out for further discussions, with some of them I have questions, but they're not like stoppers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, from my standpoint, I can look at these and say, citywide project, grant writer, that's a done deal. I don't think there's any debate. And there's like 4 of you I don't have any questions on. I just have some questions about placemaking. That's my big area. And then, I maybe have a different view of business than other. I mean, I've been in business since I got fired in 1985, so I've had to do this a long time. And anybody that has problems with business, we either teach them how to be a better salesperson or teach them how to have a better banking relationship. I've never heard of anybody writing grants for their business. That's kind of news to me, and maybe I missed something years ago, but I don't know, and putting together Shop Federal Way website upgrade, I mean, to me, that's like, if you're not doing your own, why are we waiting on the city of Federal Way to do it? But But some of these are no-brainers. Let's move it. And the childcare thing, hey, we're putting people in business, so that's a good thing that helps people that need to get kids taken care of. So that's like we're incubating a business. So I'm all for that. But anyway, four of these, we could just say, hey, let's move them ahead and let's talk about specifics on some of the others.
Chair, may
Tanya?
I make maybe a question, and I don't know if it will make a difference, but as we mentioned before, there is still, after the projections on these projects, additional funding. So maybe another way for consideration would be, there is extra funding, so if there are additional programs, these programs could move forward, and if there's a desire for additional programs, economic development can look into that with the additional funding. So maybe that's another way to look at it, that these can go forward, and if there's a desire for more, there is additional funding that we can allocate to, first off, investigate, and second off, create additional programs.
Chair Tran, can I clarify one thing?
Yes.
The agenda bill currently says October 17th for the meeting, and all the other items on this meeting are being forwarded to the 3rd. Is there a reason that we were picking the 17th, or is it just the wrong date?
No idea.
It's on the agenda, so that's why I'm asking. I think the 3rd is probably the correct date, so that's the first thing. And the other thing is, if we send this to business, even if you send everything to business, the entire council could take each item as a separate vote then, instead of, it's up to the committee, of course, but if the committee wants to just forward this item to business, then you could make
Could
the
hash it out
sausage then.
That'd probably be the smartest.
Yeah, I noticed that this is going to the council business instead of the consent. And the other thing that I want to mention is that when we took the vote on item F, I believe the motion said is go to the consent. So do we need to redo that?
Whoa, I'm lost.
I think there was a request at the agenda setting to move it from consent to business.
Right, but then
And I'm not sure why, because I wasn't at that meeting.
What was item one?
item F, the inter-fund loan.
Oh, the
I asked, so I can explain it. I asked that it go to business because anytime we have an interfund loan, the citizens need to understand what's going on. And I would have pulled it anyway from consent, so I just might as well just take care of it during agenda setting.
Chair Tran, if someone wants to make a motion to change it, that would be appropriate.
Yeah,
So,
we-
where we at right now?
So
'Cause mine
we're kind of
doesn't
mixing
have-
everything up. So why don't we take care of the business at hand before we move on to fixing the old business? Does that make sense? We're currently on an agenda item. Let's dispose of it, and then we can go back to F.
Okay, so we are on G right now.
Yes.
Okay.
that's
And then after this,
right.
we'll go back to F.
Okay, I'll take your vote on that. So, if I understand this correctly, we're gonna ask some questions now and then place this on business, council business, so we can then hash it out at that point then?
I mean, we could ask question here, but to me,
And there's-
since we are gonna move on to business anyway, then why ask the question now? I mean, it's a double work.
I would love to have the questions maybe
I'm gonna
by
give them to you
email
now.
or something, just
Yeah.
so that I can
Okay.
prepare and then not have to come back again, if that's possible. By
Fair-
email is fine.
fair
It
enough.
doesn't have to be discussed
They're
here,
not-
but.
They're shorter than usual.
Okay.
So, I just have a couple questions on a few of these items, and then if you can't get back to me today, we'll just pick it up at the next one. The first one, the top 100, I've asked in the past, do we have any update you'll be able to present us at the council meeting for, like how many entries or kind of any of that kind of information?
So it hasn't started yet.
Oh.
It was a very informal start, just something that was, done, let's say with a poster and having a
Okay.
survey, but this would actually be a push for the goal of reaching 300 entries. And it's not a contest, it's just kind of like a, hey, building some pride in the city and kind of what are the cool things in the city that everybody really thinks are authentic to Federal Way, to start generating pride, to kind of figure out like what are some things that we can highlight, in our community that are, maybe great tourist attractions that people didn't know about, or maybe, there's an event that we had in the past that was super cool that we might want to bring back. So it's more of just figuring out like what
So it's
do
not-
people have pride on in Federal Way? Yeah.
Okay, so it's not in play right now, and this is to market it, so it would be in play?
Correct, yeah. I mean, it's been informal, like I said, just with the QR code and everything's kind of sitting
Yeah,
there.
that's what I
but-
thought we might have.
Yeah, kind of coming back to the discussion, before about businesses and having websites. A website can just sit there, but unless it's promoted and marketed, then it just
Gotcha.
kind of sits there.
All right, my next one's a placemaking strategy. On that one, I'd like to know what the KPIs or key performance indicators, or what we're going to use for metrics to see if that was actually a beneficial program or not.
So it is a great question, but the program is not contracted and started yet, so.
I know, but
it's-
beforehand, I'd like to know, like, what are we going to look at as a
Of course.
city to determine if it
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
benefit
of course.
or not?
And placemaking is more for, the developers, the business community, tourists, things like that. So essentially, to build awareness for, let's say, outside of the region, not necessarily, for anything other than business, to attract business, tourists, travelers, things like that.
Yeah, so I'd still like to know what we're going to look
Absolutely.
at to track.
Yeah, and that will be on the fly as the program develops.
Gotcha. For the Shop Federal Way, I'd be curious to know how is that going to benefit restaurants, service industries, anything that doesn't have an actual product? And then also, I'm going to recommend, because I'm going to bring that one up quite a bit in the meeting, is looking at Google's new search engine where e-commerce is built into it. That gets released in the next 6 to 9 months. So that's something I'll bring up in that conversation.
So, did you want me to answer, or?
No. I mean,
or-
just like
okay.
when we get to the meeting, like I'll ask you about the, how a service, like a plumber, how's it benefit from that, or a restaurant and all that stuff.
Yep.
If it's e-commerce.
Gift certificates, yeah, gift certificates. So
Okay.
essentially, they will get promoted in the region through the promotion of the website. And then if a user comes to the website, then there would be a gift certificate that they could purchase.
Gotcha. Business outreach program, on that one, do we have will there be any information, or is that one still the same as the other thing? It's to be marketed?
Yeah, in the next couple weeks, yeah, it's just finished. And so now we'll be providing the report in the
Okay.
next couple weeks. Yeah.
Will that be maybe ready for the council meeting then, or something?
I don't want to promise, but I will
Okay.
do my
Do best.
best. Yeah.
Okay. And the in-house childcare, is there seed money included that for them to help get the business started? Or is it, once they get in, they're going to be trained up, but then they got to go find their own financing?
So they would need to find their own financing, but I mean, there's hard costs and there's soft costs. And so, that's something that is part of the cost of doing business. So, it's not that they're getting sponsored on this. It's to educate them and to get them licensed.
Okay. Just for $80,000, I wanted to know if there was anything more than just the education on that one.
Well, it's the education, it's the licensing, it's the surround services, it's the mentoring, it's kind of the whole system.
Okay. And then the last one is the broken window. I work for Glazers, which are people who do the commercial glass install and stuff. I'll let you know, I can connect you with people, but your best one is probably to put like $25,000 for them to do like a reimbursement. The changing of the structure of the metal, that's a huge thing, and it's very expensive. And then the unbreakable glass, no one's really bought that stuff because it's like 10 times as much money. So I'm just going to give you a heads up that I'm going to recommend that if we're going to do anything for that, it's going to be a reimbursement of an X amount for a business, and not go too deep into some of these alternative snares that people can do with their storefronts. But like I said, I can pass on that information. I work for a couple Glazers, and I just happen to hear from the other side on that one. That's all I had at the moment. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Dovey?
Yeah, Paul brings up a couple questions I'd like to kind of dig into a little bit more. The in-home childcare business incubator, again, I think it's a great idea. If we're gonna, and we're basically, I think we're training people to go into business of the childcare business to help families that need childcare at affordable rates, and we're putting people in business, so it's a good ecosystem. But it would seem to me that you get somebody all the way to the front door and they don't have any capital, or they don't know how to get it, and there's soft costs. I mean, you might want to have something in there to help them get across the front door so they could open their business. if they graduate and they do all these things and, you know, there's a grant of, I don't know, some number that buys little desks or whatever it is to make it work, I think that would make it a more rounded program.
I can certainly look into
Yeah.
that, yeah.
I mean, the goal would be to get 2 or 3 or 4 people to say, hey, this is great, they do it, and it helps everybody in the community. And the other thing about the placemaker thing, what I'm hearing, this is more like selling Federal Way. I mean, I heard you say for developers to see what's going on in Federal Way, so they may want to put their business here or build homes or whatever it is. Is 200,000 really the number it is to build a sales kit? I call it a sales kit for Federal Way, or is it really $100,000? I mean,
So we do have initial proposals, and it is something that, you know, I personally have been involved in for
Yeah, I know,
many
that's
years.
where your
Yeah.
background.
So it's, so it is a good number, and there are, you know, solid proposals behind it, so it's not just a made-up number. The reason why these are all estimates is because there's no actual, you know,
Yeah,
contract that's been signed yet. So these are all by, you know, industry accredited organizations that work specifically in economic development with cities on placemaking.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wash?
Right. Kind of going back to the childcare one and what Jack was referring to, with part of the training, is part of the training on how to obtain financing and the financial end of how to run a business as well?
Yes.
Okay, because, I mean, it seems to me as though that's very important, that even if we aren't able to give them actual seed money, if we're able to give them training on how to obtain that seed money and
Correct.
know exactly what is required.
Yeah.
So,
And maybe just for context, I think I mentioned it before, this program has a 92% success rate, which means that, you know, almost 100% of the cohort for each year is still in business. So, you know, they have a pretty good formula and they've got those types of things figured out.
yeah. And then also going back to the placemaking, I think one of the challenges, you know, last week we were talking together about placemaking some, and I think that one of the challenges for a lot of us on the council and for the community is that the term placemaking is a very nebulous term. I mean, it's not a you know, it's not concrete. What, you know,
I
and so
appreciate that,
trying to explain exactly what is meant by placemaking. And I think that that's important if we're going to, you know, if you're going to sell the council on it, and then if we're going to sell the community on it.
I really appreciate that
Placemaking needs to
feedback,
be more of a concrete term rather than just economic development lingo.
Would, just for conversation, would like marketing strategy, would that be more simple? Okay, great. I will immediately change that. That was great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Would that help answer a lot of the questions if it was updated to marketing strategy?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that might be good.
I apologize for the unclarity, and I appreciate that. So we will change that right away.
Great, I can make the motion if you like. Okay, so,
good practice, you can do it.
go ahead.
So it's going to go for city council?
Business.
Business agenda? And do I have to make it as amended on this one?
No, we haven't voted on this one, so you just need to change to, instead of to the consent agenda, just go to business agenda.
Right. We're changing from the 17th to the 3rd? Yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
third.
I move to forward the proposed ARPA grant project to the October 3rd, 2023 council business agenda for approval.
I can second that.
Great. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passed 3-0. And for the record, now we are moving back to item F, and we need to redo the motion. Yeah, the interfund loan.
Could I just say, I am going to pull it, so someone will need to be giving a report on it. So they can give it during the consent agenda time or business time.
Ryan?
I believe, well, we already talked about this at agenda setting. The consensus was they wanted it on business, and that's why we changed it on this agenda to be for business. So if this, either way you want to do it, if it stays on consent, council, deputy mayor is going to pull it, or you guys can just change it right now to business. Just, it would be.
Yeah, go to
I move
business.
to change item F from consent to business.
I make a motion to change item F from consent to council business agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Matter passed 3-0 as amended. All right, so we are moving on to item H, AP voucher 7/15/23 through August 16/23, and payroll voucher from 7/1/23 to 7/3.
Good evening, Council Chair Tran, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Kochmar, Council Committee members. Before you are the AP vouchers in the amount of $5,545.59 and payroll vouchers in the amount of $4,333,890.66. These are reasonable to prior months, as indicated in the memo. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Honda, for your questions that you sent before the meeting. And I would be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have on the listing of the vouchers.
Jack? Oh, no questions.
I have
Oh,
a question
sorry.
on the voucher. I'm looking for I finally found your response. On the operation and maintenance facility, the questions I asked on the Helix Design Group. So I asked about how we could be spending money on that, as I didn't realize we had voted to spend money on that at this point. And the answer was that there was 2.14 million budgeted for 2023 and 42 million budgeted for 2024. Where did the 42 million come from? Because when we passed the budget, it was understanding that it was going to cost about 30 million at that point. So where did the 42 million come from allocated for 2024?
It got appropriated through a budget ordinance for potential future bonding of the project,
And
even though the bond has not been brought to council
For 42
as a
million.
separate ordinance yet, but
But
it was as a placeholder.
the design cost was put into the REIT fund in the current year for 2023.
That's correct.
Could I get the meeting that happened at? Because I would just be really interested in that.
Yeah, I can pull that information. We can get that to you.
Okay, I'm still concerned about the 42 million. You know, we haven't, it went from 30 million when the budget was passed. And then, that was when Still Lake was gonna be used, the park was gonna be used. And I know we have to purchase property at this point, but, you know, we haven't really seen, because it hasn't been finalized, all of the cost for this. So I'm concerned that 42 million isn't even gonna cover it at this point, but, I would just like to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I move to forward the vouchers to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, matter passed 3-0. We are moving on to the next item, item I, AP voucher 8/17/23 through 9/15/23, payroll voucher from 8/1/23 to 8/31/23. Chase?
Thank you. I know your packets are quite thick this month because we skipped a month, but we have the AP vouchers before you in the amount of $4,101,914.53 and payroll vouchers in the amount of $4,310,319.83. Sometimes the difference in the AP vouchers typically have to do with just timing of like construction projects or quarterly payments. So that's the main difference between those payments. And we also had an email from Deputy Mayor Honda, so thank you, on these vouchers. And we made an attempt to answer the questions on those. And we'd be happy to answer anything additional that you might have.
I do appreciate you answering my questions on the vouchers, because when people say they want to look line by line on our budget, that's where you look line by line, is on
Yeah.
the vouchers.
Yeah, thank you for your questions each month. It's nice to have each of you, really looking at those and keeping the city accountable. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
I move to forward the vouchers to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Banner passed 3-0. Thank you, Jace. Okay, we are moving on to item J and K, financial, monthly financial report for July 23, and you know what? Let's do one at a time, right?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm going to combine them both. The months of July and August, I could give you July, but the calendar has marched on, and so I will give you a cumulative report through
All right.
August. And these are the policy questions that I try to answer. I know that that's not what's on the agenda item, but you as a governing body, you need me to be able to confirm to you whether the expenditures are operating within the adopted budget that you approved at the beginning of the year, and are the revenues coming in sufficiently? Because if they're not, we would have to make some course corrections. And then also I have an obligation to tell you whether our investments are within policy. And if you've looked at your packet, I've put the page numbers on page 201 and page 202. Yes, the general fund and street fund is coming in. The expenditures are within budget, not by much, 200,000 or 0.5%. But that's also, we have made budget amendments as needed to make sure that when new things came in, we adjusted the budget. And then the same thing is true with the other major funds, although those are all restricted funds. So yes, the entire city is still coming in within budget. Are the revenues sufficient? This is my one-page table that shows the top 5 principal revenues. They are in the green compared to budget. I'll show you graphs in a moment, as I always do. The 3 ones on the bottom, real estate excise tax is the one that is of the biggest concern. Property tax, it's a little bit behind budget, but as every year, that is generally a matter of timing, because property tax payments are made in 2 tranches, April, May, and then September, October. And then lodging tax is still behind budget, but it's catching up, as I will show you. So let me show you the details. Sales tax, this graph is on a $20 million scale, and I've put a little notation on the right there that the budget for this year is $19.9 million, and it's coming in favorable. Every month, it's been just a touch favorable. We are running 7% ahead of budget, and that is 13% over prior year. And I think we know that 6% of that is due to inflation, but still, that is an indicator of a strong economy. Our utility tax revenues, all of them taken combined, again, this is on a $20 million scale. The total budget for all of our utility tax revenues is 17.8, and this is also coming in both favorable to budget and better than prior year, about 5 and 6%. Property tax revenue, this is the one where we see April and May payments, and then October, November also. And this one, the scale's a little bit less. The scale here is 11 million expected. That's how much we budgeted. And it's a touch unfavorable at the moment, but it's going to be coming in virtually on budget, because that's the amount that was levied, and that's what the property owners pay. Our real estate excise tax, this is the one that is really coming in under budget. And so Finance and Public Works, we put our heads together, and we got with EJ and Desiree, and we looked at which projects we're just going to have to delay some spending into. Most of them are all started and in progress. However, They pushed $1 million out in, so that it'll happen into 2024. So we're just managing, as the revenue comes in, we make sure that we're managing our spending.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
To put it in perspective, I just read the other day that there was an apartment building that sold for $34 million in Federal Way.
Yes.
How much REIT would that actually generate?
We
You
get
know?
we get 0.5%, and so on 32 million, that one transaction would be 160,000.
160,000.
And we're behind 1.6 million, so that's
Yeah.
a tenth of it.
So-
But that one transaction, it's a commercial transaction, it's a significant one. And when we budgeted, we tried to exclude all of the commercial spikes that we saw in the past.
So wouldn't it be, you know, we're at the end of September, we got October, we're in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't we I mean, we're never gonna make this up in the next.
True.
Huh?
That's exactly right.
So why don't are you gonna come back to us and readjust it fairly soon, so we actually make the decision, we're not gonna make up the $2.5 million, not gonna happen?
Well, we don't budget,
Well, I mean, the budget's set, but,
drop the expenses, reduce the expenses. We could do that at the next quarter. Yeah, we absolutely could.
it would seem to me, we know this is never gonna come back this year. Who knows what's gonna happen in 2024, but we'd have to have a whole bunch of houses sale and a whole bunch of stuff happening, and it's not, I mean.
Yes, and that's why I say we huddled up on staff and said, we need to scale back our expenditures, because we know we're not gonna.
Yeah, and if, quite honestly, if you hadn't made the decision with the mayor and the team and started investing in different interests, we'd be having a different discussion right now.
Now, real estate excise tax, that's a restricted revenue. It can only be spent on public works and parks, capital projects, and then the debt that supported those. So the debt, we have to make that, so it's the projects that EJ is gonna shift the timing of. We'll still do them, but only as the revenue comes in.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure. That's an important one. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So with our maintenance building that we're going to be building, which has gone to 42 million, and it's going to be bonded, correct? So where are the funds coming from? Are we expecting the funds to come from REIT?
A
for
large,
the
a large
bond?
portion, a large portion, yes. So that means our question is when is the economy going to improve? Well, it's largely largely a question of when are interest rates going to come down on mortgages? Because I think you all know that the property values are pretty stable in this town. So it's not the price of homes, it's the frequency of sales. It's the number of transactions. So when the mortgage rates come down, I would expect the real estate excise tax, the REIT to improve. And that would be true of commercial properties too. I imagine commercial properties are the most able to hold off.
So does that mean we're going to have to push this project forward into the future because we won't have the money from REIT?
Possibly. I have a graph on where rates are right now, and we expect them to drop, but the question is when?
Okay, so I have another question as far as the maintenance building goes. Can we build that in sections? Does it all have to be built at once?
I don't have the answer to that. We'll come back to you. I'll share this question with EJ, I think, together, because it'll require our reforecasting REIT and the other funding sources, SWIM, the surface water management revenues, and existing fund balance is in place. So REIT is the tricky one. So we may be forecasting. And to your point, it's not just you asking, it's going to be our bankers and underwriters. They're going to require us to have a pretty good case on how we're going to be paying our debt.
So Paul, and then Deputy Mayor, and then Jack.
Just real quick, you said you pushed off what projects have been pushed off? Do you actually have that?
I'm sorry?
You said that because of the lower REIT revenues that we've collected, that we had to push some projects off. Do you happen to know what projects they were that were pushed off?
I was flipping through my pages. There's 5 of them, yes. And I don't know if I have it handy. I absolutely do. can't find the page.
No worries.
Yeah. There's 5 projects, and, yeah, I meant to have them in my pocket, and I don't have them.
Okay.
Are they all road projects?
Yeah, they're all streets.
Okay.
Seems to me one was a roundabout, and there was, yeah. Yep, yeah. I apologize, because that's the obvious question I needed to have. Well, you know what? Yeah,
Can you just email that to us
happy
later?
to. Happy to, yep,
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
sure.
A local city is also building an M&O facility, and they already own the property that they're building it on, but they're using ARPA money to build their project. Is that, well, obviously it must be allowed because they're doing it.
Yeah.
Do we have any ARPA money left that could go into this project?
All of our ARPA money, we completely went through the whole entire list and authorized all of it, so,
How much of the ARPA money has been spent in, like, streetlights? Are the streetlights being, I have a neighbor who asks me this, are the streetlights coming in and who's getting new streetlights?
that was
Are
a two,
those-
that was a, yeah, I happen to remember that one, $2 million, and it seems to me that, I think the entire list, all directors have an action plan to spend, or, do the bidding and all that stuff. I think they're all rolling, because we're monitoring to make sure that they spend it all. So I think every one of them is in progress, having been authorized.
So, going forward in 2024, a local city was talking about, they're a member of SCORE, and apparently SCORE is increasing their prices, at least for this city I'm talking about. Is SCORE increasing our prices, and are we, going into 2024, do we have other financial issues that we're going to need to be accommodating and changing things around for?
We met with the chief and deputy chief just last week to go over their current year's jail spending. They have 5 or 6 different places that they have, and I think that SCORE is giving us the non-member price, which is better than the member price, if I recall. And I don't know all the details, the chief does. He's managing economically within his budget. So, I don't specifically know the answer about how much SCORE is raising our price. I don't.
Okay. And for REIT, is there a forecast for REIT that we can look at to see what we might be expecting in the future?
I will be bringing it to the October FedRec as part of our last quarterly budget amendment. Yes,
Okay. All right, thank you.
sure.
Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, talking about property tax revenue, just a few days ago, I got the card from the county on my property tax assessment, and amazingly, it went down.
Was it down 4%?
It was down more than 4%.
Okay.
And so, as I recall, as I recall, it was down significantly more than 4%. And so, what kind of impact might that be having on future revenues?
King County is sending us weekly estimates of the assessed value up through November. And their current estimate is that as a city, it's dropped 4%. There are still a lot of adjustments they have yet to make on the new construction numbers. There's an appeals process and whatever. However, the amount that it will have, the impact it will have on our property tax revenue next year is none. We will still be able to request our 1% increase. So
Yeah,
that's,
since we're already way below the,
yeah. So the resulting rate will change, but our levy will be able to have a 1% increase. How much does 1% come out to? About 138,000. That's how much the increase will be. And I'll bring these numbers to you in October, because I'll be bringing the tax levy at our next meeting.
all right, thank you.
Okay. Let me get to the finish line here. Lodging tax. You don't have to have a magnifying glass to see that in the last month, that little red number came up a little bit. It's still unfavorable to budget, but it is over prior year. Now, this is on a very small scale. We're expecting $300,000 budget, but it's just encouraging to see that that sector has seen just a little bit of improvement. That's encouraging. Our investment revenue, as a result of the rates still being high, we are doing wonderfully. We're favorable, of course, to budget and over prior year. Our cash balance, if you look at the last 4 months there, you can see that it comes down just a little bit. What happens is we get our property tax in 2 big chunks, and then we coast for a few months. And 4 out of the last 5 years, we've seen the same exact thing. So I'm actually quite pleased with the amount of cash balance that we're able to retain. I just thought I would try to make that a little bit more entertaining. This graph here, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time. I show this to you every year. All of our investments that we have, plus the amount that we have invested at the state treasurer, I always show you what the composition of it is, but in July, the U.S. federal government's credit rating was downgraded. The Fitch rating agency dropped the U.S. government from a AAA to a AA. They did that in July. S&P had already done that back in 2011. Now, how does that, and this is kind of a disclosure, because out of our 116 million, whatever it was, a lot of it is invested in things that have to do with the federal government. The biggest chunk, U.S. Treasury, that is the issuer. The U.S. Treasury is the issue of the treasuries we buy. Everything over on the right, all of the agencies, is backed by the faith and credit of the U.S. government. Now, what about that big green chunk down at the bottom, the amount that we have invested with the local government investment pool at the state treasurer? What do they invest our money in? 42% of it is treasuries and 23% agencies. So that means that 2 out of 3 rating agencies now give a credit rating to 99% of our investments of AA. Well, what about that last little slice that I didn't identify? In July, we happened to buy a corporate bond. Now, this isn't stock, this is debt. This is a debt issue of Apple, the corporation. It is rated AAA. I do not tend to purchase many corporate debt issues because we consider it less safe, and yet it's almost ironic that it's rated higher than the federal government. What concerns do we have as a governing body? None, really. It would have to be, what is our concern about the federal government going bankrupt? And that is highly improbable, hugely improbable, right? I just disclosed that we had a rating change on virtually almost everything that we have invested. Now, we were talking about rates a few minutes ago. The upper graph here, I wish I could get rid of that little thing. I can do that. The upper graph shows what the Federal Reserve has done recently with rate hikes or rate drops. Now, this is a 10-year graph. Back in 2016, they raised rates gradually, and then 2020, they dropped like a rock. That's typical of what the Federal Reserve does. If we went back to their previous cycle, we would see the same thing. And below, you can see what the market has done in response. So our expectation is over the next, I don't know, year, 2 years. Council President, you were just asking, when are rates going to drop? We can see that they're as high as they have ever been. And when they do drop, we would expect them to drop soon. And that's when we would know when our real estate market would recover, but that requires a crystal ball. So this is the rate environment that we're investing in. It's good news for our investments. Our investment revenue is doing well. In July and August, I'm combining here, we had 2 bonds mature. That means we got the $1 million back and we got the last coupon payment, and they were earning 1.4-ish. We took $5 million out of our state treasurer pool and we invested another 5 because we want to lock in these rates in the neighborhood of 4% for nearly 5 years. As you can see, we will be getting these yields. The last one that we purchased, we will get that yield through January 2028. And just towards the bottom of the page, there's that little million that we invested in Apple, and we got 4.47%. That's the highest yield of the whole bunch. That's typical when you buy a corporate. You usually get a little bit more yield because you're taking more risk. However, that's not the case. That's our one AAA rated investment now. So we got a higher yield on a safer investment. I'll take it. So, as always, I can report that our expenditures are within budget. The revenues are almost all favorable. We're watching REIT, and we have actually adjusted our expense timing. Our cash balances are strong, and our investments, we're preparing for a rate drop by locking in yield for 5 years. Next year next month, at the next FedRAC meeting, I'll be bringing the 2024 tax levy. That's when the county tax assessor will give us their mostly final amount on the assessed value. I will bring you those numbers. Then it'll go forward to the first and second hearings in November so that we can meet the county's deadline for the tax levy ordinance. And then next month, I will also be bringing the last chance that we have for a budget amendment. All departments are looking at their budgets. We're looking at any grants that have been approved. Next month will be the last chance that we have to change the 2023 budget. And so we'll bring that for discussion at FedRAC, and then that'll also go to hearings at November at the 2 council meetings. That's my report, as interesting and educational and entertaining as I can make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Paul?
Yeah, a couple questions about the investments. We always do $1 million. Is there a lock-in limit of how much each bond buy or each security buy we do is? Which is just standard procedures?
Our brokers would handle a transaction as small as $200,000.
Okay.
If we wanted to, but since right now we have about 60 million and we're going 5 years, so the math is easy. I'm just using round numbers, to be honest.
And I thought it was 3 years, so it's 5 years we're able to go out?
We're extending it out. We're at about 4.5 years right now, and I'm inching out 5.
Is 5 the legal max for us?
That's in our investment policy, which is approved by the council. We've set that as our limit.
No problem.
Yeah.
I thought it was 3 on that one. No problem. And are we still planning the strategy of slowly converting the state-held money over to the privately, not privately held, but the investments with our own bonds and securities then? Because I know at one point we were looking at getting the numbers, they're starting to go that way anyway.
Of that 40 million that's still on deposit at the state treasurer, we still have about 14 million that we know is going to be spent out of ARPA, and that'll leave 30 million, and we debate that all the time. How much should we really leave, so that we can, because there's capital projects that could need it, so.
Now, with the purchase of the bonds and stuff like that, we could still sell that.
Every one of them is
especially
liquid.
when the interest rate comes down, it has a high enough rate to actually have.
That's true. Every one of them is liquid. However, if rates go up, the price goes down, so we would sell at a loss. Now, when rates come down, prices go up, then we'd have some opportunity to sell if we wanted to. I think our preference is to keep the yield as long as we can.
And then the only other thing I had noticed was that, other than our investments and sales, it looks like red light tickets are one of the bigger revenue generators for us right now.
I'm sorry, which one?
Red light tickets.
Oh, red light tickets. That's a nuance I did not catch, but I know that.
It's a big nuance.
The chief has got some of his staff assigned to that. That fund is doing well.
1.1 million above.
Now, we'd rather have a safe city. We'd rather not issue tickets. I'm not going to say I ever encourage tickets. I'm not going to say that, but we'll take it.
Council President?
So for your investments for 4.5 years, you're expecting a lock-in of 200,000?
No, I could buy in lots of 200,000, but I think it's more.
No, I mean at 4% on 5 million?
Oh,
You're expecting a lock-in amount of 200,000?
yes, everything we buy is non-callable. We will absolutely get it until it matures. Yeah. All right.
Okay, I think we're ready for the vote.
We do both right, July, and then we'll do.
Ryan, we can combine both ones, or you want to do it separately?
If you're feeling bold.
Okay.
Just do them separately.
Yeah, what the heck. I move to forward the July 2023 and August 2023 monthly financial reports to the October 3rd, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The matter passed 3-0. Thank you, Steve. And our next meeting is going to be on October 24th at 5 p.m. in this chamber. And that will conclude our meeting for today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.